the Giant, and they were
Right.
buddies.
Right.
But it made for great publicity.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of speculation there. There's not a whole lot of basis to it. It's just a sense that some people have gotten that it would be hard for something to go so wrong that these two really fast friends would have just walked away from their friendship.
I can see reasons why, but I know we're going to get into some of that.
Yeah, let's just talk about it right now.
Okay.
November of 1994, while Tupac was recording in a studio, he was shot 5 times and robbed of thousands of dollars worth of jewelry. And Tupac apparently said that Biggie knew that this was going to happen and that he had even planned it. Biggie, of course, denied it and was quoted as saying later that Tupac, quote, he just couldn't really say who had something to do with it at the time. So Tupac had just kind of leaned in and blamed Biggie.
I don't know who it is. Well, you must know who it is. Is that what I am reading that to say?
I interpret it as Biggie saying Tupac knew who did it, but wasn't in a position to badmouth said person who did it. Like,
okay.
maybe, hey, it was that crappy manager that he had that ripped him off all the time and orchestrated
bunch of
something.
stuff.
Yeah, like a guy named Suge Knight.
Yeah. We're being so mean to poor Suge.
I should maybe we should like be taking the Scientology route on this one, and I should just be like backpedaling as much as possible because like Suge Knight exists in the real world, and I don't really want to be on his hate list.
In this particular situation, I think we're safe because this is all based on research, and this is all based on what people have given interviews to say. So in this instance, I'm not worried that Suge Knight's going to know where we are.
That's fair.
Plus, I gave out Joe's address.
Great,
Plus, you
perfect.
can't really sue us because this is all out there. The public
That's
domain,
true.
so.
Yeah. Anyways, the rivalry had been kind of brewing between East Coast and West Coast rappers, and
Though it hadn't reached its head.
it hadn't reached its head at that point. No. The reason that Tupac thought that Biggie knew something about this was because in 1995, Biggie released a song that you most certainly know of his called Big Papa. The B-side of this single was a song called Who Shot Ya? And this did not sit super well with Tupac. He was pretty sure that the song was meant to be a taunt. I've heard that it was even recorded in the same studio, not the like actual physical soundbox studio, but the same, I don't know what those...
Recording studio
building, I guess, that Tupac was shot in.
Mm-hmm.
This is not true. The documents that, quote, proved that Biggie was recording in that studio that night, they were fake.
I had heard that he actually recorded Who Shot Ya before the shooting actually took place.
Yeah, that's actually the next point that I was going to bring up, is that the truth of Who Shot Ya is that it was actually recorded years prior, and it was meant to be an intro to a Mary J. Blige album. And I don't know if Tupac ever knew that.
I gotta be honest with you, I listened to it. I didn't hear anything that I could even remotely connect to Tupac.
Well,
in terms of a taunt.
Maybe not Tupac specifically, but it is about a dude getting shot.
That's all there is to it.
And in this particular genre of music, there's a lot of people getting shot.
Is hubris the right word to assume that they're talking about you?
Yep, it is. Hubris is exactly the right word.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
so
why.
I guess we have the two theories, right? Either the feud was real or it was fake. I think that it was real in that Tupac thought it was real. And I think that it caused Biggie genuine pain that his friend was kind of walking away from the friendship. That's just a total personal perception of my own. I don't have anything to back it up. But I do think that Tupac was being influenced by a lot of people around him and probably some drugs around him.
He was smoking a lot of pot.
It caused him to really alienate people who really cared for him and forged kind of relationships that maybe didn't have his best interests at heart.
Yeah, I do think that maybe Tupac was indulging in drugs a little bit much. And the reason I say that is you see him in a lot of videos and he's either smoking a rollie or he's smoking a joint. And there's things where he was at award shows that everybody was puffing, and it was not an uncommon thing for people to lace pot with angel dust at the time. So
Yep.
I really feel like whether he knew it or not, he was probably intended to be.
Yeah, it's possible. Let's talk about some other important stuff. Still doing the kind of housekeeping of this story. Sorry, guys.
Wow.
Huge backstory.
Huge backstory. We're gonna, again, cliff notes.
Baby's got a huge backstory.
Yeah, this is actually the
Baby
scary
got
part of the story.
Huge backstory. Yes, this is. I agree with that. It's really important to this story to know that Death Row Records had on the payroll many, quote, off-duty cops as bodyguards.
They were working for, was it Right Way Security? Was that the security company that they were using? Reggie Wright Jr., who works for Death Row.
Yes.
He, I believe, is the one who set up and ran the security company.
Yes.
Because it was Right Way. I know that, and I'm almost positive it was a play on his name.
Yeah. So some of these people have become really key players in the death of Tupac and Biggie. All of the cops were implicated in the Rampart scandal, which you guys know what that is.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Terrible.
It was
In
a big
case
story.
you don't know, this is a thing that happened in the, God, it was the late 90s, right? This was all
97, I want to
Yeah.
say.
97, that exposed more than 70 LAPD cops who were part of the anti-gang task force called CRASH, which is an acronym for Community Resources Against Street Hoodlums, which I love,
Yeah, that's awesome.
as basically really crappy dudes.
Yeah, they were very
Yeah.
corrupt. And
Not
actually,
sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I remember hearing about at the time that things about like faking evidence and framing people.
Yeah,
Beatings
like
and shootings.
unprovoked shootings, unprovoked beatings, planting evidence, framing suspects, stealing, then dealing narcotics, a bank robbery, perjury, and cover-ups. One of the key players here is David Mack, who was an officer who walked into a bank and stole $170,000 while he was still a cop.
Yeah, that's protect and serve.
Yeah, he worked for Death Row Records.
Yeah, and he was kind of involved in a lot of illegal stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
they weren't just providing, like, protection. I mean, they got involved in some blatantly
really
illegal
nasty stuff.
With Death Row.
Yeah. There were a couple others that I don't think we really need to name. Rampart police officers had strong ties not only to Death Row, but also gangs, most notably the Piru Bloods, which we're going to talk about in just 1 second. But David Mack, who is currently in jail, openly affiliates with the Bloods. So we'll talk a little bit about the Pirus, which you may or may not know about.
Yeah.
If you listen to rap music, you've probably heard that word before.
I thought I did. I thought I did. But it's amazing how much there is to the Bloods and the Crips when you actually start diving into it.
Yeah, it's actually really, really fascinating. And I would recommend that you go out and do some research on it if you're interested. Essentially, the Blood and the Crips are overarching, I guess, like umbrella gangs. And there are gang factions all over America and other places that are part of that. Right? That's how I would describe it.
Piru is the corporation, and the individual games would be like the little franchises of a business. Is kind of how I would look at it.
I look at it as kind of a tribal structure. I'd say you have a small clan, and then that clan is part of a larger tribe, and that larger tribe is in turn part of a larger tribal organization.
Yeah, I think that's
Better
fair.
job, Joe.
I've heard it actually described from some people. I think it was even like Kendrick Lamar was talking about how he would kind of describe it as tribes in Africa, because it's kind of how it is. But to your point, Steve, the reason that I would say that's not true is that Bloods are the overarching international group.
Corporation, as I tried to put it.
Piru is a local family, gang family. They're actually referred to as a mob family.
I had never heard that either until I watched some stuff and went, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, so they still exist, this group. They still have pretty strong ties to many rappers that are famous and really, really rich. And as it turns out, it will probably not surprise very many people. Suge Knight is a very, very well-known and very, very outspoken member of the Piru family.
Did either of you ever think to look to see what that stands for?
Piru?
Yeah.
No. I don't think it stands
an
for
acronym?
anything.
Oh, it's an acronym.
What is it?
It stands for Pimps in Red Uniforms. That's from the stuff that I read. It's Pimps in Red Uniforms, PIRU, and Crips. This, I don't know where this came from or how somebody came up with this, but Crip is Piru spelled backwards if you turn the U on its side to make it a C. According to the Urban Dictionary and stuff and there was not just Urban Dictionary, but there was a number of things that I was reading through. That's where that came from. That's why you hear Piru and you hear Crips, and they're the same thing. It's just a different way of saying it. I mean, it's not utterly creative, but it was really interesting.
Yeah,
that is interesting.
I always thought that the Crips got their name because they like to shoot their opponents in the knees and cripple them. Yeah.
No.
Really?
That's not a real thing.
Okay. I
don't think so.
I really hope
I'll
not.
research it and get it back to you guys next week. Get back to you next week about it.
Great.
Yeah.
That's, I think, all of the housekeeping. I think. Do you guys
think so?
feel like there's any more backstory that needs to be talked about before we start talking about the actual story that we're talking about?
Yeah,
Wait, we're half an hour in? Oh no, let's muddy this some more.
Yeah, great.
Let's just add some more facts.
Yeah, what else do you want to talk about?
No, that's the thing about it is that
there's so much.
Yeah.
It's so complicated and it's confusing after a while. There's so many names involved.
Yeah, there's a lot of names involved, there's a lot of players involved, and keeping it straight, there's not one good source. I can't say, go check out this thing. This is, of course, a bunch of research from a bunch of different sources. I think there are a couple documentaries that do a pretty good job of bringing all of the information together, but you have to watch all of them because they all have different information. They all have different
have a different agenda.
Yeah.
That was my hard part. I watched 2 or 3 documentaries on this because, as we talked about this, Joe and I were talking about this earlier before we started recording, that was the only way I could keep these names straight, is I could actually get a face to the name through an interview or other people, and still I was in the middle of the second or third one going, wait, who?
Yeah, I actually ran into that when I was, kind of writing the script for this. I'd watched a couple documentaries and I was like, oh, I really want to talk about that one guy they interviewed. Oh no.
What's that guy's name?
What's the guy? Who was it? And how was he related? And why did I care about him? I just have the face in front of me, So let's just try to stumble our way through this story.
Okay, so where are we starting at?
We're going to start September 7th, 1996.
So we're going back to Tupac? Mm-hmm. Okay.
We're going to start at the beginning of the events. So September 7th, 1996 might be a date that some of you recognize for reasons not because of the thing we're about to talk about, because it was a night in boxing history, actually, which is fairly controversial.
I remember this, and so many people were so angry for paying for HBO pay-per-view.
It was the heavyweight championship in America between Bruce Seldon and Mike Tyson. This fight was pretty controversial for a number of reasons, but mostly because it seemed really fixed, because Tyson knocked Seldon out in just 1 minute and 49 seconds.
For the heavyweight title.
For the heavyweight title. I didn't ever watch it. I don't really care to watch boxing, but I read
it doesn't take very long.
I read an account that said that Tyson hit him in the head, but it looked like he kind of just grazed him at 1:30, and he goes down, and then he gets up and says, no, I can go. And then Tyson hits him one more time, and the dude gets back up, but he can't stay standing, and so the ref is just like, no, we're done here. Which is crazy to me. And so many people paid, $150 or something to watch this on HBO.
A fight that was expected to go for an hour.
Yeah, it was supposed to go a really long time. It lasted less than 2 minutes.
Well, to be honest, I played Mike Tyson's Punch-Out on the Nintendo, and Mike could hit pretty hard.
Oh, yeah. I actually think if they'd actually fixed the fight, then they would have stretched it out for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. This fight was orchestrated. This is a fun little fact here. This fight was orchestrated by a man named James Rosemond, who is also known as Jimmy Henchman.
Henchman?
I like it.
Really?
Yes. I mean, it's not his real name. But sometimes people get dumb names.
I got a henchman.
Right, Suge Knight's real name isn't Suge. That's
Marion, right?
Yeah. But he goes by Suge, which I suppose was at one point sugar.
I would imagine.
It's spelled S-U-G-E. In case anybody was wondering, that's how you say that. Now everybody, I can hear them all going, "Oh, that dude."
Not
right?
Suge.
Yeah.
For once, we're not mispronouncing it.
Yeah. It's like I did my research.
Suge Knight.
Yeah. Okay, so Tupac and Suge, we've just been saying Suge, and now I'm thinking I want to say it that way. No, but Tupac and Suge were at the fight, and Kevin Hackey, who's one of the off-duty LAPD officers, who is actually now an ex-con and bounty hunter, was asked to tell Tupac that a member of the rival gang, the Crips, was at the casino.
This is before the fight.
This was
before the fight actually took place. The boxing match hadn't started.
Yes.
They were just in the casino having a good time.
Yes. Hackey was also asked to implicate the Crip, in a robbery that had happened earlier that year from the Piru family. Turns out some Crips walked into a Foot Locker and robbed a bunch of members of the Piru. So that's cool. This guy was named Orlando Anderson, but was known as Baby Lane.
Of course.
I wish that I had cool names like this. Tupac.
We really need to give ourselves some awesome monikers.
Mine would be D-Unit. Shorty, a.k.a. D-Unit. It's true. That's mine. I've got mine.
I'll be J-Dog, I guess.
Yeah, you can be J-Dog and Steve can be...
S-Dog.
Baldy McGee.
That's the whitest name I ever heard. Jeez.
That's why I went for it.
I know what my name is going to be. It's going to be Notorious J-O-E.
Oh, that's good, yeah.
It's actually really good.
Yeah.
Notorious, okay.
Okay, Notorious. This guy, Orlando Anderson. I'm going to call him Anderson. Sorry, by his last name. He's the only one. Tupac sees him and just attacks him.
Because Hackey had told him.
Because Hackey told him he was, part of it. Tupac was probably drunk and high and angry and...
Even if he wasn't, he was prone to fly off the handle at that point pretty quickly.
Yeah, at that point, definitely.
So, just to be straight here, was Tupac ever officially a Blood?
No.
I didn't think so.
He was there for the music, from what I can tell, but by affiliation, I think that he had to stand by the quote-unquote family.
Yeah.
I'm not a member of the mob, but I've got to respect the mob kind of mentality.
Well, obviously, you're going to be sad since your boss, Suge, is a Crip. You kind of got a Blood up there.
Uh-oh.
Straight.
Yeah. Suge joined in the beating. It's pretty much just a beating. There's surveillance tapes of it. I watched it. Suge, who was on probation at the time, kicks Anderson a couple times.
In the head. This was obviously a violation of parole, and he was eventually sent to jail for his parole violation. After the fight that they had, the beating, they watched the fight. The Tyson fight. The other beating. And then Tupac got into Suge's car with him. They were going to go to a Death Row-owned club called Club 662. 662 wasn't actually owned by Death Row, I think. Death Row made a lot of claims, or Suge made a lot of claims that they were in ownership of it. But I don't think, from the stuff that I've heard, that they actually owned it. They just went there a lot and spread that rumor. That's fair. I guess what I've always seen and just assumed was true is not, it did never say they owned it. Yeah, it was a club they went to, but they made allusions to ownership. That's fair. Because, they thought they owned the place. Sure. So Suge was driving his car, and Tupac was in the passenger seat. Well, yeah, the weird thing is, it was only those two in the car. Normally,
they have bodyguards.
You've got your bodyguards with you, and it was odd. Yeah, actually, his bodyguard, Frank Alexander, Tupac's bodyguard, sorry, was meant to be in the car with them, but Tupac, at the last moment, right before leaving, actually asked Frank if he would get in the car with Tupac's then fiance. Oh, that's right. Okay.
He said under the guise of saying, in case we need more cars to leave the club. But that's a weird little tidbit about this story, right? That at one of Tupac's very last acts in life was to tell his bodyguard, nah, go hang out with my fiance instead.
Keep her safe.
Right. Yeah. So that I think